Hey guys, what's going on? Today in this video, we're going to be breaking down a 14 Mists of Tirna Scithe on my Brewmaster monk. Sorry about the bait the other day when I did a prop Paladin video. I've just been having a lot of fun on that tank, but Brewmaster is still being played quite heavily. I actually just hit 3k, so I'm pretty thrilled with that. We're going to be pushing more IO later this week as well. Anyways, we're running Resto Druid, Elemental Shaman, Ret Paladin, and Survival Hunter. So some fairly strong specs, not necessarily meta specs, and this run was also definitely not clean. So I'm going to go over what we did right, what we did wrong, and generally just nerd out about the run and how I used offensives. I've done commentaries about this dungeon already, so I'm really going to try to hone in on certain aspects of the dungeon and fast forward through parts that I don't think really matter as much. Anyways, a big request that I always have in these videos is if I talk about my talent. So I do want to spend a little bit of time going over some things that I played personally in this key versus what you might see that's kind of standard. So really quick, let's talk about my talent build and talk about any kind of standout things that you might see. I am playing pressure points, which is actually not correct, meaning I shouldn't have played it in this dungeon. I should have just put this into like Profound Rebuttal, which would have been fine, or I could have also put it into Improved Touch, or whatever this node is, Fatal Touch. And I think it's just actually Improved Touch. The only standout talent, though, here is the Black Ox statue. I really like running this for a lot of reasons. It helps with Snap Threat. It helps group up mobs quicker by using an AoE Provoke with Hasty Provocation, meaning that all the mobs have a 50% movement speed. Also, it helps get mobs out of that defender circle that they spawn in the maze, which is also pretty useful. I use this a couple times throughout the run just to move mobs out in a group, which is pretty nice. Definitely don't have to play it. It's just something that I like playing. On the Spectre, though, you're going to see that I'm not running any capstones, nor am I running Ox Dance. This isn't a key that warrants these abilities to be ran. You're going to get just as much survivability out of other talents, and if anything, more damage. So because I'm not running Ox Dance, I'm able to put points into things like Facepalm. I also have Determination being ran as well, making that Fortifying Brew cooldown actually very good in here because there is a lot of physical damage hits, and you have Anima Slash to worry about. So being able to stagger off a heavier amount of that incoming damage ends up making Fortifying Brew a worthy cooldown, but it just sucks that we have to spend 3 points total in our tree to get there. And I'm also running something like Quick Sip, so I have 9 points in the top of my tree, where normally you try to get 8 and then move into the next area of the tree. Zenvet is also good for a couple of big hits. I don't remember in this run if I'm using it in anywhere in particular that I can think off the top of my head, but I'll point it out if we get to that point. And then Shado-pan is going to be super standard. We're running High Impact, and we're running the Vivify heal. Predictive Training is pretty much a lock-in. These two talents you could change around. I've seen people play either or of the choice nodes, but generally this is what you're going to see standard. Anyways, let's get into the run. Having a Night Elf, Tauren, or Herbalist is very important here. I am a Night Elf, so we're not going to have any issue opening up the doors. So we get a door skip, we get a 10% main stat buff for 10 minutes throughout the run as well, a little bit later on, and we also get our extra checkpoints. So having a Night Elf is very, very beneficial. We have other Night Elves as well, so it's not a big deal. Anyways, this first pull is very spooky, but your group can counter pretty much all of the AoE damage by staying in melee. The Spike Claws only leap at targets that are further than like 5 or 8 yards away, but basically if everyone's in melee, they won't leap, therefore they don't do damage outside of auto attacks of the tank. Harvester needs to be kicked, so I'm going to be setting focus to it here. There's my set focus, and the way that I like to start this pull is I wait just a second or two because I've seen this pack here get pulled based on this patrol, and depending on what ability you throw. Like if I was targeting one of these mobs and threw a Keg Smash, there's a chance that this can get pulled. We don't want to do that. So I'm targeting this front Spike Claw. I'm going to be casting Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, and then we don't want to slow them any more than that like 20% slow they're getting with Keg Smash. We want all of them to group up quickly with this far pull. So I'm popping Dampen Harm pretty early on. We also have Iron Bark. Putting a defensive on your tank early on in this pull as a healer is crucial. Most of your group won't need it, and your tank's going to take a ton of initial damage from all these Spike Claws as well as these Soul Cleavers. So I'm doing Dampen. I'm going to get an early Celestial Brew. This benefits me in a couple of ways. It's going to get me some early damage. It's also going to give me a little bit of healing, and then I'm going to go into a Black Ox Brew pretty quickly here. I can't remember if I use them actually in the right order. Harvest Essence also needs to be kicked. This does a ton of group damage, and it heals the mob for all the damage it does, so you want to stop that pretty quickly here. Anyways, we Celestial Brew into a Black Ox Brew reset back into another Celestial Brew, and then I pop my fortifying brew as well. So I'm going to feel pretty stable. We do want to watch out for these swirls. If we get clipped by this, we're going to take more damage, which we definitely don't want to do. And then this soul split cast can be diffused off. It won't reflect it if I'm not mistaken, but you can dispel yourself if you ever get to 2 stacks and you feel a little scared. I was about to Ring of Peace there to create some distance, but then I realized I need it for the next pull. Once all the spike claws go down and the caster, this pull becomes a little tame, but these soul cleavers do a lot of damage with their soul split cast, as well as the fact that they gain an aura that heals them for the damage they deal. So you definitely want to create some distance if you need to. Here we're going to be casting a paralysis into a Ring of Peace. This will allow us to skip this mob pretty easily without pulling it in combat. There's a lot of other ways you can do this. You can, if you have a dragon in your group, you can sleepwalk. If you have a DH, you can imprison. A rogue is generally going to be a little bit more of a meta spec in the current season, so you can always sap. If you're running with a priest too, you can mind soothe past this mob. There's tons of way for your group to get around it. And then we're gonna do something I think kind of unique in these lower runs, is we're just gonna do this pull by itself. If you have enough damage, especially with a comp that just does sustained damage all the time, we're not worried about just kind of pulling pack by pack by pack, because the LE Shaman's a little bit more bursty with their cooldowns. Their cooldown is a 3-minute, does a ton of damage. But things like Ret Paladin and Survival Hunter do damage on like a 30-second, minute and a half profile. So these pulls tend to actually just end up working out. And then, of course, if the Shaman gets lucky and gets good procs with DRE, they're going to also do a ton of damage. If you don't know what DRE is, it's deeply rooted elements. It allows them to randomly proc Ascendance, and Ascendance right now is just insanely overpowered as a CD. So if they get that for a few seconds, they're going to be looking really good. Anyways, I start cutting it really early here because I want to get my Mushroom. Also, these Soul Cleavers, once I target them, you're going to see this little like debuff here. It's kind of hard. This allows them to leech for like 3% of their max health every time they successfully hit you. When they have this buff, if you're standing in melee, the pull will take so much longer to die if they end up hitting you, because they're going to just end up healing. Luckily, Brewmaster does have a fair bit of dodge, and then we're going to go into this next Bowbreaker pull. Bowbreakers can be pretty deadly. There's 2 ways you can do this. Either focus one down really fast, so you only have to deal with 1 thrash at a time, or push them very evenly, and then have your healer and your group just commit big defensives. You're not going to need the defenses for boss for a little bit. You're not going to need healing CDs for a little bit. So you can be a little bit more aggressive with your damage here, but what we end up doing is we just push Skull down to 50. Our healer is going to expel some CDs. We're going to use some personals as well. Things like Convoke the Spirits, Astral Shift is coming out as well. And just generally the rest of our group is fairly tanky. So we're not too worried about that first one. And then we're just kind of focusing these 2 guys down. Eventually, the other Bowbreaker is going to start doing his cast. So I'm going to just fast forward a little bit. We heal through that. And we will go into boss here in a second. So we did save Lust. This is about the 3.5 minute mark. This means that Spymaster trinkets should be around the 30 to 35 stack, give or take. Maybe closer to 30, I believe. But basically, it's going to allow our Shaman to do nutty damage during the intermission. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our DPS actually are going to be sending CDs early on Ulfaron, which is the tree. And we're going to be making sure we get kicks on these Spirit Bolts. Now, Spirit Bolts early on, maybe on this level, you definitely want to kick them, but generally they won't one-shot anyone until he does his Embrace Darkness cast. So that's when you really want to make sure you're locking down these bolts. You want to kick on every move. Generally speaking, we have a somewhat pseudo-assigned kick order, but we definitely fuck it up a good bit here. I'm trying to aim frontals towards the wall or away from the group, just so I'm not accidentally clipping anyone. And of course, playing with a Shaman means we don't have to worry about fear. Warriors also have an ability that allows you to immune the fear. They can take like a group Berserker rage, which is pretty cool. But outside of that, you're generally just going to, if you get feared, you get feared. You want to put yourself in a good position. We kick the boss every time the Tears of the Forest start, because we need the boss to move with us so we can continue hitting him. Frontal's always going to be kind of aimed sideways and or towards the wall to make sure my group's not getting clipped. They always know where it's going to be safe without having to think about the mechanic. If a tank can do that, if a tank can basically remove a mechanic that someone has to think about, that's best case scenario. So like frontal baits are really important. The last boss, you're going to see this with like Mind Link. I'll explain that once we get there. Anyways, the first burn comes out. We lost a little early. Ascendance is going to get popped. You're going to see our Shaman skyrocketing on the meters here. Of course, my little timeline bar is going to cover it up, but he's popping off. He's already climbing up to that 2 mil mark. Our Survival Hunter is also getting to that 2 mil, and the Shaman is now at 2.5 mil damage, and we were able to get a big fat 45% burn there. General rule of thumb for this boss, you want to get a 60-ish% push, ideally lower than 60. And then you want to get a sub 20, ideally closer to 15% push. And then after you're at that 15% mark, you can definitely tunnel. If you're any higher than that, it really depends on your group CDs. It depends on your ability to kind of just like focus funnel damage into Maloch. But that's kind of the rule that I like to have in my groups is we go sub 60, sub 20, tunnel. If you get a third set or if you think you're close, you can gauge it by looking at both of their health pools. If Ingra Maloch has a smaller health pool or like health amount left than Ulfaron, you can definitely tunnel. Or at least from the 20% mark. So fear comes out. We put ourselves in a position. I like to stand here because if I do get feared, I run into the tree, which means I'm not moving. The only time I have to be careful of that is if it overlaps with Tears of the Forest, which is possible. Also, big shout out to Epi. Thanks for the sub. Hope you're doing well, my dude. And yes, I was definitely slandering you while in our comms. Also, speaking of which, I'm going to have the unedited version of this run on Patreon for free. Anyone can go view it, but it's over there because I have music playing in the background. I don't want to get any copyright strikes over here on YouTube. But if you want to hear our comms during the key and have background music and stuff, go check out Patreon. The link will be below. Anyways, next push happens. We should have waited a little bit for Survival of the Fittest, or whatever this is called. Whatever the Survival Hunter cooldown is. Not Survival of the Fittest. What is it called? Coordinated Assault. But that's okay. We push a little early. Again, there's that sub 14, sub 12. Now we're looking really good. I think we end up getting like a 10% push here. And this is easily tunnelable. In terms of defensives, you can see I don't really use anything. You'll see Black Axe Brew on cooldown, but the thing I'm doing with this is I'm using Black Axe Brew as an offensive. And what I mean by that is when you're out of energy, you can like spam Tiger Palm, you can spam Spinning Crane Kick to dump energy for Flurry Strike charges. And then when you're out of energy, you can use Black Axe Brew to reset your energy, which is super beneficial. And you're already getting cooldown reduction on it. So Black Axe Brew, generally speaking, can be used often and should be used almost on CD. With the cooldown reduction you're going to end up getting from it, you're going to have it almost every like minute or so. Going into the maze, I am setting X marker to Mistcaller. For some reason, it defaults blue. Obviously, blue is hard to see in a blue environment, so I do X because it contrasts pretty well. And so now we're able to see where Mistcaller goes, into which door, and we can generally see the first two rooms. Our Druid is going to activate the checkpoint. She's going right. Our Hunter is going to be sending his pet through the wall. I'm tilting my camera like this so I can see if X is going this way. If I saw the X marker starting to go up this way, I would know it's the far door. Anyways, you can see the Hunter pet is now going through the wall to go pull. This is pretty beneficial. The Hunter's going to lose out on a lot of damage at the start here because he won't have a pet. He's going to have to revive his pet. But basically, it's going to allow us to double up this pull, this room. Warlocks can do this. I believe DKs can do it, or specifically Unholy DKs can send their pet as well. Brewmasters can use Nizao, but I'm not running Nizao in this, actually pretty much in any key. So you can do it with that. There's also other strategies where like a monk can like double roll with an evoker who can use their range increase to like cheat. I don't know. There's some crazy ways you can put through the wall. There's also like a new strat where you use like pygmy oil. I'll have to find that video. Maybe I'll do a video about it at some point. But basically, we're trying to get these mobs through the wall. I drop Ring of Peace to prevent some of the early damage, and from our Hunter getting meleeed, he's gonna feign. I have my totem down, my Black Hawk statue, so I'm able to AoE taunt these guys. And then what I'm doing now is I'm just backing up the hill. So every time one of the defenders drops the AoE thing on the ground, I forgot what it's called, we're just gonna back up. And this makes my group always know where to drop earthquakes and where to place their F-flow and any other type of ground ability. So having consistent pathing like this will always be a DPS increase to your group, because a smart player is going to be like, oh, I see him just backing up in a line, so I'm going to start like dropping my earthquakes and my F-flows in that line. And now once the mobs are starting to get low, we definitely want to be near this door just for time efficiency. So I'm going to start walking my way down the hill here momentarily. There isn't anything too crazy for the tank to know in this pull. There is the one Anima Slash. I am rotating my defensives because also melees hurt a lot in this dungeon. But the Anima Slash is what you really want to keep an eye out for. Diffuse magic is great against this. While it can't be diffused off or it can't be like immuned, diffuse magic is a 60% magic DR, which Anima Slash does magic damage. So it's a giant DR for that. Anyways, it's going to be Star. And then we also saw Mistcaller go through this first door here. So I'm going to unlock it. And I'm going to wait for my group just for a second. And unfortunately, our Shaman's going to get absolutely griefed here. Priority target in this pull is going to be the Stalker. The Stalker does a really nasty bite. The Singer applies a pretty weird debuff that needs to be dispelled pretty much immediately. We're going to Hodge the Stalker, but unfortunately what ends up happening is the Expel, the Injection, and I think the Stalker are all going to go onto our Shaman, who just gets absolutely obliterated here. It looks like he had Astral Shift, but I'm not sure how true that was because Omni CD is a little broken right now and it's not actually, like it's not showing. It counts for CDR that they don't actually have. Anyways, this pull's going to be pretty tame. I don't think there's anything too crazy. After the Stinger dies, it's just double Defender. You're going to just make little circles around the room. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. We took a little too long. We should have been figuring out this door earlier, but we just didn't. But we eventually got it, so a little slow on that. The Matriarch, you could pull mobs onto the Matriarch, but the Matriarch gets really scary, so we ended up just, 1v1ing this, or 5v1ing this man, I guess. While we're doing this, we're keeping an eye out for these, we're going near these pillars. Also, big shout out Aces. Thanks for the sub. We are going to basically try to figure out this room while just hitting this boss. We want to watch out for frontal, and as soon as the pool of radiance spawns, we're going to provoke the boss out. Generally, the Matriarch will always get 1 tick, so it'll heal for like the 3% or 4%, whatever it does. And yeah. The big thing here is Shred Armor. It is dodgeable, so you can kind of prep a good elusive brawler stack for it. You can also outrange it by kiting. So it queues up when it's in melee range. So if I just started booking it, which you'll see me try to do in a little bit, but I end up just taking it to the face. You can actually drop stacks here. So if I kept running, it would eventually drop, but I go back in and then it does Shred Armor again. Unfortunately, I do commit Fortifying Brew here, which was kind of a mistake, but I commit Fortifying Brew. I do live. I am able to stagger off a lot of the damage, and then eventually this guy will die. So this next room is where it gets a little fucked up. So we already figured out the room. The star marker's down. And yeah, we know what door it is. But my hunter didn't realize we already figured that out. So what ends up happening is I roll in here. I pop Weapons of Order. And my hunter, you can see him back here on the minimap, runs through another door, which gets me stunned and killed. So don't do that. The door was already open. We had a marker down. I don't know. I hope Vulnerable's watching this, because you got me killed here, and I'm going to be petty about it forever. Anyways, we have a little bit of a run back. Starting this pull, what I'm going to do is, because I now have no cooldowns, because I used it on the last pull before I got stunned and killed, I'm setting focus to the Shaper. Our Shaman's going to watch Tender, and then I'm going to be calling for Ironbark from our Resto Druid. This is going to help me be a little bit more stable on pull. I'm going to roll out a pretty aggressive Slush Brew pretty early on here, I believe. And then I'm going to be going to a Black Ox Brew as a cooldown. I do have a Diffuse Magic as a way to mitigate the Guardian's Anima Slash. I'm going to be using Ring of Peace to knock the mobs away from that first spawn. Bramblethorn Root luckily got stopped by Earthquake. And then I'm going to need to dip my toes back into that pool to get the kick. And then we're going to keep cutting in circles, trying to make small micro movements to allow my Shaman to do the damage he deserves to do with that Earthquake. And then that's it. We're just going to kite circles. We're chilling. What ends up happening then is we figure out the room is to the right. So it's the northmost room. This is a very scary room for Brewmaster monks because there's 2 guardians. And we don't really have a way for anything to rip threat. You could pet taunt one of the guardians' anima slashes, which is definitely doable. But then your hunter's going to lose a ton of damage. So you have to be careful about doing that. Luckily, I'm able to live. First anima slashes, I end up committing Diffuse Magic. The next set, I don't remember what I do here because I'm pretty much dry. I do have Celestial Brew coming up now, and I will have a Black Ox Brew as well. Unfortunately, I used Black Ox Brew. Oh no, I Celestial Brewed into Black Ox almost immediately. That gives me a quick reset. We had Ironbark committed a little bit ago, and now I have Fortifying Brew rolling up as well. So we're feeling really healthy for this pull. But these Anima Slashes, especially how they get staggered, it's very, very scary. But this pull will eventually go down. And once we run into the next boss room, we don't have Lust for 45 seconds, and we don't have Ascendance for 45 seconds, so it makes sense for us to do one more trash pull. Now, this pull, this left side pull, you can definitely pull with, you don't have to have a pet. You can pull with, Crackling Jay Lightning, but because we have a pet who can pull through the walls, we're going to actually pull this group because it has 1 less Guardian. There's more kicks, but less tank damage, which is pretty important here because a lot of the other damage in this pull specifically, or in these pulls, the group damage is manageable. It's an expel here and there. It's a little annoying to move out for Mistwords, but it's like you have a Tender to kick, you have a Shaper to kick, but if you kick those things, it's just a Stinger, which can just be dispelled by the healer, which isn't a big deal. A couple of expels, but expels again are physical damage. They don't The most annoying part about them is that they do a little bit of a knockback. If they overlap with other mechanics, they can be deadly, but we don't have any other thing in this pool. So the southmost room, this room that we just pulled, is the easiest of the 4, in my opinion. And that's why we did this and are dragging it down to boss. And then once this pull goes down, I'll fast forward a couple seconds here, we're going to go into Mistcaller. So Mistcaller is pretty easy fight. There's a couple of hard overlaps, mostly dealing with the intermissions. What I'm doing is I'm set focusing to Mistcaller so I can freely target whatever I need to in the fight while still getting the kick. And the scariest part of this encounter is going to be the intermission. Luckily, Brewmaster is very good at dealing with intermission. We have a lot of defenses we don't need to use during this phase. And Touch of Death is really, really strong. It can pretty much fast track 2 of the 3 phases. We're gonna do it at the 70% threshold and the 10% threshold. We identify pretty quickly which one it is. It's gonna be this one that was kind of where the Vulpine is, unfortunately. I'm gonna be able to target it. And I'm gonna be using Touch of Death once it's in that 25% health range, and I can still get the kick on Mistcaller. That was a very late Touch of Death, by the way. But generally at this key level with my item level, especially if you pair it with Fort Brew, the 25 to 30% range is kind of what you're looking for to be able to actually cast Touch of Death. Very good route by our hunter there on the Vulpine. Means we don't have to like run away from it. Doesn't mean we have to worry about it. Again, if a player can remove a mechanic from a fight, like in this fight, for example, very good thing to do. Frozen Trap also works very well. The only problem with our comp is that we're generally running like 3.5 melee. And I say half because Resto Druid prefers being in melee for a couple of reasons. Obviously to be an Afflo and etc., but also to kitty weave. They generally do more damage when kitty weaving. So because we have 4 people in melee, that means 4 people are baiting the Vulpine in melee, which is obviously not great. 40% guessing game is coming out now. We're going to quickly identify which one it is. It's going to be this one, which is circled. And we're going to be blasting it. Now, I don't have Touch of Death for this one, so we definitely want to put a little bit more damage into it. Freeze tag comes out in melee, so we have to be very, very careful. And dodgeball. So why this fight is very hectic in the intermission phases is because, look, you have a Vulpine to run away from, you have dodgeballs to dodge, you have a penalizing burst from all 4 of these mobs doing crazy group damage, and this mob, the tank needs to be able to be in melee range to kick the patty cake casts, like right here. So we have to be very, very, very careful. This is when you want to send any kind of defensives, more or less as a group, like tanks. I don't know, I don't feel like I take a lot of damage in any of these boss encounters, but you definitely want to be aggressive with like off healing, with defensives, etc., etc. Vulpine comes out, good Frozen Trap. We want to be careful about the damage. Something broke the Frozen Trap, but luckily, Entangling Roots has a small damage threshold before it actually breaks. Unfortunately, Mech got clipped there. I couldn't tell. It didn't even look like he was standing in it, but I don't feel like rewinding to... Actually, fuck it. I'm going to rewind to see. Right here, it comes out. Looks like... It doesn't look like he was in it, actually, which is very funny. If you're ever not sure, you know, obviously back out a little bit. The hitbox on this boss isn't massive, but it's big enough to, like, back away really quick. Ooh, Teva, thanks so much for the sub again during this stream. This was... I appreciate everyone who's subbed so far to my channel. It's been great. Anyways, we're pulling away from the Vulpine here. And then we're going to go to the last phase. The last phase, I have Touch of Death, and I have Fortifying Brew, which is going to be useful. I'm not going to need Fortifying Brew on any of the next trash pulls, so it's going to allow me to commit it here to be able to Touch of Death the mob fairly early. So really quickly, we're going to identify which one it is. It's going to be the unfilled one. So it's going to be this purple marker in the corner. And again, boss is set focus, so when that patty cake cast does come out right after this freeze tag, I'm going to be able to kick it pretty quickly. Boom, kicked it. We're watching the Vulpine, we're dodging balls, and I'm going to be able to Touch of Death right after the dodgeball fades, 26% with the Fort Brew, and we're vibing. Anyways, that's the fight. Fight will go down. I did 650k on that fight. It's kind of weird because there's a lot of like damage reduction parts of the encounter. Okay, so here's where the key goes to shit. We still time it, but a lot of things happen and I want to talk about them. So first things first, you can skip this acid gullet, but the problem is it kind of pats back and forth, and unfortunately I do the wrong thing here. I para it when it's in the wrong spot. So I'm limited to how far I can knock it with Ring of Peace. Because I'm limited with how far I can knock it, this is still too close. Ideally, it'd be a little bit further to the right. So I see that, I know that, but I don't tell my group that it's too close. So what I do is I'm like, I'm going to be smart, and I'm going to use my roll and lighter than air talent to dash forward. You can already probably tell where this is going to go wrong. So I do it once, I do it again, but I should have angled to land here. And I also thought I still had my third charge of roll. So 2 things that I did wrong. Regardless, I believe our shaman got in combat with this acid gullet, and I am flying right down this hole. So I can't do anything about this. I have to die. We don't have a priest to like life grip me back up. And the other problem is our shaman is currently in combat, which is a big problem because he has like 35 stacks of Spymaster and Ascendants, and we plan on doing a very large pull here. So what we're going to do, and this is kind of an on-the-fly decision, instead of pulling this left pack with this right pack, I'm going to pull this right pack with the group that's on top of the hill. So I'm waiting for the reavers to pat. I'm trying to let my group know we're very incoherent right now because we're all freaking out about what to do. I just say we're gonna run back up the hill, just move back up the hill, and these guys will eventually come in. Now, these guys don't do any crazy AoE damage. They do a little bit of single target damage with their dot that they apply to players, but what we're looking out for is the stack horn. So we're going to go into this. Shaman's going to be chilling. He's going to pop a sentence shortly once the other mobs get up here. I'm going to get first kick on the staghorn on the resistance, and then the like the AoE heal is going to get kicked as well. Outside of that, we're just dodging these swirls. If the swirls disappear, it's because they were stunned, so you can stun them to buy your group more time. If you see someone in a bad position, you can stun or knock them if you need to allow your players to get into a better position. And that's pretty much it. Acid Nova from the staghorn as well not only deals a ton of AoE damage, but it also makes everyone take 20% increased damage. So that's really scary when you have these like circle debuffs around players. You want to be very aggressive with your defensives when there's staghorns in a pull like this, of this magnitude. Anyways, we're pretty much vibing. We're still good on time. We had a death, but we were still able to make use of the cooldowns. We got a little extra percent. It's just, unfortunately, a little bit further of a run. Now, the rest of the run, we're going to try to keep pretty tame. We're going to do like 1 pack at a time for a couple more pulls. Then we'll do a big double pull and hopefully get to boss when Lust comes up. That's what we're aiming for. So 5 minutes on Lust means we have 5 minutes to get to boss. Acid Nova comes out. Again, big hit. We had Barkskin available, could have been used there. We also had things like Bubble. Turtle. I mean, we were pretty healthy here. We also have Lay on Hands. We should have Lay on Hands mech. So what ends up happening is, I think another swirl targets our druid here. You can see him trying to finish a cast. Then he tries to move, and he'll end up dying here to that. Reavers come in, and now we're playing the defensive game. Brewmasters without a healer. It's not a fun tank to play when you don't have a healer. So I commit my health pot there. We're just trying to basically focus on lockdown. Nova's coming out, so big burst of damage about to happen. Our druid gets hit while running back. I'm going to need some big heals. I'm going to start kiting. I'm trying to kite the best I can and making sure we're getting kicks, the appropriate level of amount of kicks here. So we got kicks there. We're kind of freaking out. We got to this point in the dungeon. We just started freaking out. Don't freak out. The dungeon's tame. You look at this timer. You don't need that long for the last boss. The last boss isn't that difficult. Just be clean with the trash. And we're pretty much good. Reavers with this comp is very good. We have 3 raw poison dispels. So we have Detox, we have Nature's Curse, and we have Dispel? No, whatever. Cleanse, right? That's what this one is for Paladin. We also have Feigned Death removal, and we also have Poison Cleansing Totem. So this comp with poisons, very chill. Reavers basically do no damage, which is very nice. We're getting kicks on resistance. Again, we need to make sure we're watching out for that Acid Nova cast. I believe I personally have a weak ore that tells me it says defensive. You'll see it pop up, I think, right above my nameplates or right on top of my nameplates on the next Acid Nova cast. And now we're just kind of AoEing these down. So Acid Nova, oh, it's underneath the Acid Nova here, which is unfortunate, but I'll have to fix that actually. So Acid Nova, use a defensive or make sure you're healthy right afterwards, especially if you have a debuff on you. And then our next pull, we're going to do something a little bit heavier. So we're going to be doing these, we're going to do a double pull here. I thought about pulling in Reavers on top of all of this because we had Ascendants coming up, but I figured we're great on time. We have 7 minutes left in the key. We need to allocate about 4 for boss, and we have 3 minutes on Lust still. So we're vibing. We get luckily he gets an Ascendance proc there, I believe, but he wasn't fully set up, so it didn't do too much damage. This pull does get a little scary towards the end. I start to get a little bit dry on defensives. I have Fortifying Brew rolling now, but I don't have Solstice Brew. I don't have Black Ox Brew, but luckily I have a little thing called Ring of Peace, which I'll be dropping here shortly. I go into a leg sweep to stop the auto attacks. I drop Ring of Peace to create a little bit of distance between me and the mobs. Now, unfortunately, they're in an awkward position in terms of for my melee, but tank staying alive is more important than melee DPS because if the tank dies, the group dies. So Ring of Peace is a great defensive for kiting. Try not to knock the mobs like I did there. Drop it a little bit further behind you and let the mobs walk into it. It reduces how far they get knocked when they do that, when they're walking into it instead. And then also it allows your DPS to kind of know exactly where the mobs are going to be at all times. So instead of doing this pull, we normally do this Gorger pull up here, but I was like, wait a second. We don't need that much percent. Reavers also do way less damage to us, so let's not risk sending defensives on this pack when we can just pull these Reavers. Now, obviously, he got meleeed, our Ret Paladin, so that's why he took a little bit of damage there, but for the most part, the poison, and some people don't know this, but the poison does not do damage upon application, but it only does damage off after the first tick, which happens about 2.5 seconds after it gets applied. So you can see here, whenever the poison gets applied to someone, it won't do damage for a couple of seconds. Now, I don't know why we're not dispelling it. I eventually did, but look, it just got applied to me, but I took no damage. My health, I'm still very healthy. Same with Wenwu. He has a little bit of an absorb, but basically, if you're quick with the dispels, these pulls do literally no damage. And simple as that. Okay, there's a lot of cool things going on in this fight, and the tank has a lot of agency if it's done like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to pixel stack. Also, by the way, the orange marker's there for my group to know if they ever see the orange marker on their screen or if they find themselves near this orange marker, they need to be careful because we didn't pull that pack on the stairs. If we pull that pack, we're going to wipe. 30 seconds to lust. Ascendance is up. I think we're going to wait, actually, 30 seconds to lust with CDs. Some people are going to send on pull, but that's fine. But we have 5.5 minutes, so we're looking pretty healthy here. I think we end up killing it in 4.5, but we do have a couple of deaths. Anyways, we're pixel stacking. First set of swirls goes out. You go very small movement to the left. And now the next time that happens, the swirls will spawn underneath us and they're going to move south based on like how the room is positioned. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate 90 degrees, if that makes sense. So now instead of the boss facing this wall, he's going to be facing the south wall. And next time that happens, we're going to just slightly move to the left. Also, benefit of us being stacked is all the larvas are going to come right in. They're going to stack up nice and neat. We're going to be able to get like link sweep here if we want to. We're going to be able to get some CC. Mind Link happens, and because everyone's stacked, I know exactly how far I need to move with Mind Link, so no one takes damage. Boom. It's already broken, no one took damage. Larvas are about to die, they died a little slow, that's okay though. And then we're going to be lusting here in about a second. Now we have to be careful, when larvas die, they do drop pool, or like this poison on the ground, so we back up a little bit. Acid Explosion's about to come out. We stack, we all move to the left, very little. See how they're moving to the south? Now, the next time this happens, they're going to move to the south and to the west. So now we're going to have the boss face the west wall, and we're going to move to the north. We have some time. What's going to end up happening is he's going to phase, so we're going to chase. We have Ascendance rolling. We have Lust going still. We're kind of just vibing. Larvas are going to die pretty quickly. I don't know where the last little ad is. That's kind of funny. And now what we're going to do is we're going to stack back up. I'm going to tell people to stack on me. They're all going to move in. Acid Explosion is going to come out. And now if we all move just to the left, look at how clean this looks. You have like little clumps of poison. Now, as you get later in the fight, any minor inconsistency you had will lead to a major problem. So you definitely want to try to be very accurate when you're doing this strategy. I only advise doing this in like a pre-made group. If you try doing this in a pug, it's just kind of hard unless everyone knows to stack on the tank and the tank is positioning properly. But what I like about the strat is it keeps the room clean. It keeps Mind Link consistent. It makes sure the ad pools are always underneath. But see, now we're facing him towards the north wall and we're going to move to the east, basically, again, to our left. So pools come out here and all we're going to do is sidestep. And this is in theory, this should be the entire fight. It's going to go downhill in a little bit here. The boss is around the 44% mark. The boss phases at 70 and 40. That's when you're going to get that big burst of consumption damage when he goes to the center of the room. You want to use defensives there, and you want to use, like, ideally some big single target damage. The larvas are on us. We're going to commit a leg sweep here. We still have Ring of Peace if we need to, actually in a couple seconds, that we can now use to knock it away. Funny enough, our Ret Paladin sacked, I believe, our Shaman. And the sack is what killed our Ret Paladin. So kind of funny, but we're going to dodge those swirls. And now because of the deaths and trying to get battle res, and you can see we're kind of split up. We have someone on the east side, someone on the west side. I'm on the north side. Our healer's here. We have 3 seconds to get into position. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. He's going to take the res. We're kind of stacked, but now the movements are going to be really weird. So we should have moved to like the left here. But unfortunately, we just kind of like all went in different directions, so it ends up being fine. So it just means the next couple of acid explosions are going to be all over the place. But again, it doesn't matter, because if you look at our room, it's kind of hard to see from this angle, but clump of pools, clump of pools, clump of pool, clump of pool. But like, look at how much free space we have to use. This orange marker means we're not in a super safe spot. We just want, I'm putting down markers again. I basically was saying, don't go past these markers. Mind Link comes out, I'm going to roll away. Mind Link does negative damage, and then they're all going to just move away from the larvas. And that's the fight. It's pretty consistent. If you do it like this, we're going to pixel stack up again, but now it replicates up to the last 5 movements. So we've already gone left 4 times, or arguably left. So now what we need to do is we need to go a little bit at an angle. So between the 90 degrees, we have to go at like a 45-degree angle, but that wasn't communicated super well personally by me. So we're going to end up actually having to just kind of YOLO this one. Ends up being fine. And that'll pretty much be the fight. And that's pretty much it. So the boss only has about 15% more left. And the fight's going to actually go pretty easily. Now, unfortunately, I think we have one more death here too, which is just kind of funny. I believe our hunter gets clipped. And this is why it's very important to be super clean with swirls. So I'm going to run out with Mind Link. When we get back in, we're going to see that the acid explosion is going to happen right after this coalescing poison. We're going to try to stack back up here. We do have one larva on top of us. We're not super stacked. And then right when this last acid explosion comes out, it's a little bit wild. I believe our hunter was just running with the swirls and got clipped by the tail end of one, which is fine. Like, you can see his body's like right on the edge. We're going to just get a quick res on him, and he doesn't even get a res before the boss dies. So we had a minute left. We had 7 deaths. So without the 7 deaths, we would have been maybe like, we would have had an extra like 2, closer to 3 minutes left. Definitely not the perfect run, but definitely a good one, to say the least. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this commentary, and I hope you guys learned something from it. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and of course, a massive shout out to my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, I couldn't make content like this. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.